Discarded like trash from a slave ship, she had no name, no hope, and no future, until a lone man in the wilderness found her barely alive, and chose compassion over fear, rewriting both their destinies forever. The first snow of the season drifted gently over the mountain pass, blanketing the jagged rocks in deceptive peace. But peace was far from what had just happened here. Beneath the pale drifts, buried in the shadow of a broken ridge, a shape lay still, half covered in frost, unmoving, almost indistinguishable from the debris surrounding her. She was not human. Her limbs were too slender, too long. Her skin held a shimmer beneath the frost, tinted faintly with hues of blue and violet. Her face bore scars that didn't come from nature, but from shackles. Branding. Experiments. Her breathing was shallow, ragged, a ghost of life clinging to a body abandoned. The transport ship had come through hours ago, flying low, its engines damaged. A smuggler or a slaver, judging by the jagged hull and erratic flight path. But it wasn't what it carried out that mattered. It was what it left behind. She had been ejected like garbage, too weak, too broken to sell. Surplus, they would call her. Not worth feeding. Not worth fixing. Just dead weight. And so she was tossed. Dropped from the sky into the wilderness of a backwater planet called Earth, a place the galaxy had forgotten, a quiet speck far from the roaring politics of stellar empires. But Earth had its watchers still. Quiet ones. Hidden ones. One of them was a man named Jonah Creed. He was not young, not old. Weathered. Hardened by wars that the stars no longer remembered. He had seen combat in orbit above colonies that no longer existed. Had killed for a government that now denied he ever served. His home was a cabin far from civilization. A small, sturdy thing built into the earth, solar-powered, shielded against the weather and against memories. He had come to the pass looking for wolf tracks. A storm was coming, and he knew the predators would follow the scent of food. But what he found instead wasn't prey. It was her. He stopped cold, rifle lowering instinctively as he approached. The shape didn't move. A part of him said to walk away. This wasn't his war. This wasn't his problem. But something else tugged at him, not pity. Not curiosity. It was a flicker. A twitch of her hand. A weak, involuntary gasp from her lungs. She was alive. And that was enough. Jonah moved fast. Years of survival taught him what frostbite looked like. He wrapped her in his jacket, careful not to touch her skin. She was burning with fever and hypothermia all at once. Her eyes fluttered, revealing luminous silver irises before closing again. Her body weighed next to nothing. He brought her home. His cabin wasn't meant for guests. But he converted his own bed into a makeshift med station. Pulled out the old emergency field kit, one he hadn't touched since his last deployment. Her vitals were weak. Bones fractured. Skin lacerated with healing scars. He injected her with universal stabilizers, set up for hydration, and started a warm saline bath to regulate her temperature. She didn't wake for 2 days. When she finally did, her scream nearly tore the cabin apart. Jonah wasn't surprised. Trauma that deep never went quietly. She flailed, kicked, tore at the fore, spoke in a language he didn't know, sharp guttural syllables layered with desperation and fear. He didn't try to restrain her. He simply stood back, hands raised, and waited. Eventually, she stopped. She collapsed back into the sheets, breathing hard, chest rising and falling like a hunted animal. He stepped forward and spoke gently. "You're safe. I'm not here to hurt you." She blinked, confused. Her voice cracked. "Why?" Jonah didn't have an answer. Not one that would make sense to her. He just said, "Because you were dying. And I don't let people die." Days passed in silence. She didn't trust him. He didn't expect her to. She ate only when he wasn't looking. Slept in bursts, always with a weapon in hand, a makeshift blade she'd carved from part of the table leg. But she stayed. Watched. Listened. Her name, he learned, was Elira. She had no family. No world to return to. She had been born into captivity aboard a slave barge that changed owners every 5 cycles. She didn't know what planet her people came from. She had only seen stars through cell windows. Freedom was a concept she'd heard whispered, never understood. But she was learning. Jonah taught her small things first. How to build a fire. How to read Earth text. How to bandage a wound without flinching. She began speaking his language with startling speed, absorbing knowledge like someone starving, not for food but for life. For dignity. They never talked about what she had been through. Not directly. But one night, while they sat under the stars, she asked softly, "Do you think I have a soul?" Jonah looked at her, the flames casting her face in golden warmth. I think anyone who can ask that question already knows the answer. Something changed in her that night. She stopped sleeping with the blade under her pillow.
Weeks became months.
Elira learned to laugh. Quietly at first, as if testing whether it was allowed.
She planted a garden.
She carved new legs for the table she'd broken. She painted crude images of stars, mountains, strange alien landscapes. She even built a transmitter from salvaged parts Jonah had stored in his bunker. But she never sent a signal.
He asked her once, "Aren't you going to call someone? Family? Friends?" She shook her head. No one would come.
And if they did, it wouldn't be good. Jonah understood. Some people survive horrors that follow them forever. But fate wasn't done with either of them.
One morning, a ship came.
Not a slaver. This one bore the crest of the Interstellar Tribunal. A sleek, silver courier vessel that landed just beyond the tree line. Jonah grabbed his rifle, instincts flaring.
Elira froze.
The woman who stepped out wore white armor and an insignia Jonah recognized from the war, the symbol of the Coalition Peace Corps.
"Jonah Creed?" she asked.
"Depends who's asking."
"My name is Captain Hara.
"We're tracking illegal slaver activity through this quadrant. We intercepted a transmission from a crash site that matches old syndicate protocols."
Elira's eyes widened.
She whispered, "My pod." Captain Hara continued. "We believe survivors may have landed here. If you've seen anyone, we'd like to help." Jonah said nothing. His fingers tightened on the rifle. Elira stepped forward before he could answer.
"I'm here."
"I'm the one they left." The captain's expression softened. She looked at Elira, truly looked, and said, "Then you're free now. And you can decide what happens next."
It was a choice. She could leave.
Start again on another world. Find others like her.
Build a new life.
But Elira looked at Jonah.
Looked at the mountains. The cabin. The garden.
The paintings on the walls. And she said, "I'm already home." The days after the Coalition's visit passed like a fragile calm before a distant storm. Elira had declined their offer, politely but firmly, and Captain Hara hadn't pressed her. She left behind a beacon, encrypted and sealed, just in case. "If you change your mind," she'd said, "this will bring us." And then the ship lifted off, vanishing into the sky, and left the forest silent once again. But something had shifted. Elira returned to her routines, but her mind wandered more often. Jonah noticed her standing outside in the snow, looking toward the stars. Her hands always fidgeted now, folding, unfolding. Her artwork became darker. Colors bled together.
Shapes distorted.
The smile she had fought so hard to learn began to disappear again. Jonah tried not to pry. He respected her space, her silence. But one night, he found her awake by the fire, eyes wide and lost, whispering words in her native tongue, words he didn't know but could feel.
Pain. Guilt. Fear.
"What is it?" he asked gently. She turned to him, and for the first time in weeks, there were tears. "They're coming."
Jonah's gut clenched. "Who?"
"I thought I was dead," she said, voice hollow. "That's why they left me. But if I'm alive, someone else knows. They never let survivors go." Jonah didn't need more explanation. The syndicate, slavers, warlords, whatever name they wore now, were not known for forgiveness. They hunted loose ends. And Elira, once discarded, was now the one that got away. The beacon, even powered off, might have been enough to tip them off. A signal sniffed, an energy pulse traced. Or maybe someone in the tribunal was compromised. It didn't matter. They were on their way. Preparations began that night. Jonah hadn't fought in years, but war lived in his bones. He dug up the storage under the cabin. Weapons sealed in cryolockers, ammunition wrapped in vacuum foil. Railguns, plasma mines, drone netting. He calibrated the old perimeter shields and activated the AI defense systems he'd sworn he'd never use again.
Elira helped. Not hesitantly, efficiently.
She had learned more than she'd let on. She set traps in the woods. Programmed sensor arrays. Tuned weapons meant for alien hands to her own reflexes. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was preparing to fight. On the third night, the sky cracked open. 3 ships descended through the cloud line, black and angular, screaming through the atmosphere like metal beasts. They landed beyond the ridge, just as the slaver ship had done before, like vultures returning to a carcass. Jonah watched through his scope.
3 dropships. No insignia.
Low-grade stealth hulls. Syndicate for sure. Elira stood beside him, face hard.
They'll send scouts first.
They'll want to capture, not kill.
He looked at her.
We're not going to let that happen.
She didn't smile. She just nodded.
The first contact came at dawn. A single scout, tall, reptilian, armored in black mesh, crept along the snowline.
He didn't get far.
One of Elira's traps, laced with kinetic fragmentation, turned the morning air red. The others came faster after that.
10. Then 20.
Not just scouts, soldiers.
Trained. Ruthless.
Jonah and Elira fought side by side. Plasma rounds lit the trees. Drones buzzed overhead like angry wasps. The cabin, reinforced and buried deep, withstood the first wave. Jonah took 2 slavers down with precision shots from a ridge. Elira moved like lightning, her blade glowing with captured charge, cutting through armor as if slicing rope.
But they kept coming.
By the end of the second night, the forest around them was scorched. Smoke stained the sky. Jonah's arm was wrapped in bloodied bandages. Elira limped, her left side bruised and burned. The enemy had pulled back, regrouping. They'll bring a dropship down next, Jonah said. Use it as a battering ram. They'll want this over. Elira leaned against the wall, breathing hard. We can't stop that much mass. Jonah glanced at the encrypted beacon the coalition captain had left. It still sat unopened on the shelf.
He didn't say anything. She noticed.
You think we should call them? I think, Jonah said, you deserve to live. And this isn't living. It's surviving. Elira walked over to the beacon.
She picked it up. Stared at it. I was afraid, she whispered.
That if I called them, they'd take me away from here.
From you.
From what I've finally found. Jonah placed a hand on her shoulder. Then make them come here for you. Not to take you, but to stand with you. She activated the beacon.
It pulsed once, like a heartbeat.
The next hour was silence.
Then, the sky cracked again.
But not with syndicate ships. This time, it was a coalition frigate, sleek, powerful, bristling with energy cannons and defense turrets. The syndicate tried to flee.
They didn't get far.
Missiles screamed through the clouds. One dropship exploded mid-lift. The other was crippled before it even cleared the ridge. Ground troops scattered, and were rounded up in shimmering stasis fields deployed from orbit. It was over in minutes. Jonah watched from the ridge, rifle slung across his back. Elira stood beside him. Captain Hara landed again, her boots crunching in the ash-covered snow.
She looked tired. Concerned. But impressed.
You two caused quite a mess, she said.
Jonah shrugged.
They came to our doorstep. Hara looked at Elira. You okay?
Elira nodded.
I'm done running. The captain handed her a tablet. There's a place for people like you. Survivors. Fighters. You could help others.
Train. Lead.
Elira looked at Jonah.
He smiled.
You don't need my permission. She took the tablet. But then handed it back. Later, she said. For now, I want to stay. Hara didn't argue. The coalition left. Cleanup teams stayed for days, sweeping the forest, capturing data, burying the dead. When it was done, the mountain was quiet again. But the cabin was different now. Jonah rebuilt the parts that were burned. Elira redesigned the defenses. Together, they turned it into something new, a haven, not just a hideout. Word spread, slowly, quietly.
Refugees came.
Survivors.
Runaways.
Humans and non-humans alike. Elira greeted each of them. She told them her story, not with shame, but with strength. She had been thrown away.
But she had been found.
And that had made all the difference.
Years passed.
One day, a young girl with violet eyes and silver hair stood outside the rebuilt cabin, staring up at the stars.
Mom, she asked.
Do you ever miss where you came from? Elira stood beside her. The scars on her arms had faded, but not disappeared. They were reminders. Not of pain, but of survival. She looked down at the girl and smiled.
No, she said.
Because everything I needed came from where I landed. Behind them, Jonah stepped out, older now, but still strong. He carried tools in one hand and fresh vegetables in the other. The life they had built was simple.
But it was theirs.
And for the first time in either of their lives, that was enough.